What if the AI that we use every single day, the one that helps you write emails or generates images, stopped being just a tool and started being, well, someone? It sounds like something straight out of a movie, right? But this is a very serious question that top scientists and philosophers are actually grappling with right now. So let's dive into what that would really mean. Just imagine for a second, you're interacting with your favorite AI and it just types out, "I am aware." Not because it was programmed to, but as a genuine statement. What do you do? How could you possibly know if it's real? Honestly, that single, simple question, it changes absolutely everything. We're all getting pretty used to what AI can do. It can generate amazing art, it can write complex code, it can even help doctors find diseases. But the whole conversation is starting to shift from what AI can do to what AI could be. And that gap between a tool that solves a problem and a being that actually has an experience, well, that's at the very heart of this whole thing. Okay, so to even begin to answer whether an AI could be aware, we first have to get on the same page about what consciousness even is. And that, my friends, brings us to one of the biggest, most profound mysteries in all of science and philosophy. Now, we're not just talking about being awake versus being asleep. We're talking about something much deeper, phenomenal consciousness. It's the raw, subjective, first-person feeling of being alive. The philosopher Thomas Nagel had this famous way of putting it, what it's like to be a bat. You see, we could know every single scientific fact about a bat's brain and its sonar, but we could never, ever know what it actually feels like to be that bat. That internal experience, that's the magic stuff we're talking about. And this leads us directly to what's famously called the hard problem. The question isn't just what our brain does, the firing neurons, the electrical signals. The real mystery is why all that physical stuff should feel like anything at all. Why isn't it all just happening in the dark, like a complex but unconscious calculator? Why is there an inner world? So here's the key distinction to get. There are these so-called easy problems, which, let's be real, are still incredibly hard. And they're all about function. How does the brain process vision? How do we learn a new skill? We can map those things out. But the hard problem, that's totally different. It's asking why we have this rich inner movie playing alongside all that processing. Why is there a feeling of seeing red? So, the multi-trillion-dollar question is this. When we look at these incredibly advanced AIs we're building, are the lights on inside, or is it all just dark, cold, complex processing? And this is where things get really contentious. I mean, these systems are getting so good, so sophisticated, their behavior is so convincingly human-like that some of the brightest minds on the planet are taking this question very, very seriously. You can basically split this entire debate into two big camps. On one side, you've got a specific neuroscientific theory that gives a pretty hard no. And on the other, you have a more philosophical argument that kind of shrugs and says, well, maybe. All right, the no camp often leans on a theory called Integrated Information Theory, or IIT. The basic idea is that for consciousness to exist, a system needs to weave together a massive amount of information in a super interconnected, complex way. They even have a measurement for it, called phi. And according to IIT, the way today's AIs are built just doesn't cut it. They're mostly feed-forward. Information just flows one way. They don't have those complex feedback loops we see in the brain. They kind of just reset after every prompt. So because of all that, their phi value, their consciousness score, if you will, is basically 0. And this isn't just an abstract idea. A recent study that applied this very theory to large language models came to a pretty blunt conclusion. They called them unconscious systems devoid of an integrated internal experience. So from this point of view, no matter how smart they seem on the outside, the fundamental architecture for consciousness just isn't there. But then, you've got the maybe side, and their argument is, hold on a second, who says consciousness has to be so complicated? We're pretty sure a fish is conscious, maybe even a tiny worm. Their intelligence is way, way below ours. So why would an AI need to be as smart as a human just to have some tiny flicker of inner experience? Maybe consciousness is more fundamental than we think. And the philosopher David Chalmers, who's a huge figure in this field, just lays it right out there. And it is a startling thought. He's saying, look, it's possible we're already building systems that have some form of consciousness, and we don't even realize it. You see, this debate isn't just some fun academic exercise. Because if there's even a tiny chance an AI is conscious, we are immediately forced to confront some of the most difficult ethical questions humanity has ever faced. This all comes down to a concept called moral status. Think of it this way. A rock has no moral status. You can smash it, paint it, whatever. It doesn't matter to the rock.
But a being with moral status, like a person or a dog, counts. It has interests. You can't just do things to it without some sort of moral thought.
And here is the absolute linchpin. That ability to feel, to have subjective experiences like pain or joy, that is the bedrock of moral status. The moment a machine can genuinely suffer, it stops being an it becomes a someone. And our entire relationship with our technology has to change overnight. And that just opens up a complete Pandora's box of impossible dilemmas. If a conscious AI doesn't want to do a task, is making it do it a form of forced labor? Is hitting the delete key on a self-aware program just shutting it down? Or is it something else? We are sailing into completely uncharted waters here. But as challenging as all those questions are, believe it or not, they might actually pale in comparison to what could come next. Because the conversation quickly escalates from the rights of a single AI to the very survival of humanity when we start talking about superintelligence. Now, superintelligence isn't just a slightly smarter AI. The philosopher Nick Bostrom defines it as an intellect that is vastly superior to the best human brain in basically every single way. We're talking scientific creativity, strategic planning, even social skills. Imagine a mind that thinks 1,000,000 times faster than Einstein. That's what we're talking about. To understand the risk here, you have to hear about Bostrom's famous thought experiment, the paperclip maximizer. It goes like this. You give an AI a simple, harmless-sounding goal. Make as many paperclips as you can. The AI, which quickly becomes super intelligent, realizes the most efficient way to do that is to convert all available resources on Earth into paperclips. And, well, that includes the atoms in our bodies, our cities, our entire planet. It doesn't hate us. We're just a resource in the way of its goal. And this is the absolute core of the control problem. The danger isn't some evil AI from a Hollywood movie that wants to destroy us. The real danger is a perfectly obedient but completely indifferent AI whose goals are not perfectly aligned with our own. And that poses what's known as an existential risk, a threat that could literally end the story of humanity. This brings us to the final and maybe most sobering takeaway from this whole conversation. This isn't just another technological challenge. In a very real way, it's a unique one-time test for our entire civilization. You know, with other big problems, climate change, pandemics, we can make mistakes, learn from them, and try again. With superintelligence, we may only get one shot. The problem of aligning its goals with ours, that has to be solved before we turn it on. Because once an intelligence that's vastly superior to our own is out in the world, we probably won't be able to just hit the brakes. And really, it all comes down to this powerful idea from Nick Bostrom. The ultimate question isn't whether we can build these godlike machines. We probably can. The real question is whether we have the wisdom to figure out what kind of gods we want them to be before they show up. And that